Hello and welcome to the Equestrian Canada Equest National Health and Welfare Call. My name is Dr. Bettina Bobsine. I'm the co-chair of the EC Health and Welfare Committee along with Dr. Wayne Burwash. This call takes place monthly and is open to anyone in the horse industry. The call was developed to increase information sharing within the horse industry in Canada on all topics related to equine health and welfare, not just topics associated with sport or show horses. Please note the call is recorded and will be posted on EC's website along with previous calls. Links related to the call can be found in the same location. Because the call is recorded, we will hold questions until the end as some people are not comfortable with their questions being included in the final recording. We've muted the lines to avoid background noise. If you wish to unmute to ask a question at the end of the call, please click on the microphone on the microphone icon on your screen. Our first speaker today is Kate Fenner. Kate is a PhD candidate at the Sydney School of Veterinary Science. As a competitive rider, equestrian coach, and horse trainer for many years, she believes the best way forward to optimize horse welfare and rider safety is to increase our awareness of how horses are trained and managed and how these practices impact on their behavior. Kate's PhD project, eBark, will provide data for evidence-based practice in horse training and handling well into the future. As Kate is from down under in Australia, time chain challenges meant that she will not be able to answer questions in real time. We'll be happy to forward on any questions you have directly to Kate. So let's go ahead with Kate's presentation.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Equine Behaviour Assessment Research Questionnaire. This is something that we've been developing at the University of Sydney for at least the last 8 years. It's a real labour of love, and it's also the focus of a PhD student's work. So this presentation is a joint presentation with my wonderful PhD student and very good friend, Kate Fenner. Let me give you some background and then I'm going to hand over to Kate. It's fairly clear that when we watch horses, we learn a lot, and we'll never stop learning about horses, and they have so many lessons to teach us. But it's fair to say that since ancient times, horse behaviour and the bond between horses and humans has been a source of intrigue and fascination, but we have to be aware that this is one of the most dangerous things that humans can do, get on the back of a flight animal. Unfortunately, horses kill more people in developed countries than any other animal. You probably have to accept mosquitoes, but horses are more dangerous in Australia than snakes are. So we need to be very clear about the way in which their behaviour affects not just their welfare but also our safety. We know that horse law, the knowledge that we've accumulated over the centuries, is a rich mixture of both useful practices such as the time-honoured tradition of approaching horses from the left-hand side. We know now that they use the left-hand side, the eye on the left, to observe things that could relate to their safety. So safety monitoring is part of the job of the left eye, and that may explain the convention almost globally that we tend to put gear on from the left-hand side and we tend to approach horses from the left. But then there are also unsubstantiated myths, and you can think of perhaps the bad press that chestnuts and chestnut mares especially sometimes attract. There's no hard science behind that. There's no evidence that chestnuts are particularly tricky, but if you think they are, then you might treat them differently and you may well end up with a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we definitely need data to help us keep on the right track and winnow out the good stuff and leave the bad stuff. So that's why scientists like me and veterinarians in my group do like to see as much hard data as possible rather than just opinions. And that will help us. The collection of data of this sort will always help us explore the differences between breeds. They're being bred to do different jobs, but we need to know how their behaviour differs, and also how they mature mentally, and do they mature at the same rate? This is an interesting question. So what we think we need, and we're convinced of this, is a global database of horse behaviour. This will allow owners to log their horses' physical, mental and social development, and it will create a database, an evidence base on what constitutes normal and abnormal equine behaviour, and what defines good, effective and humane training. So is this foal behaving normally? Is it crib bites on a fence? And is this the sort of training that we want to see advancing in the future? Clearly, a horse's behaviour has a direct impact on his or her usefulness, and that in turn affects value. Sadly, that will have an effect on the amount of care a horse receives. So a horse that is less useful is less valuable, and therefore will get generally lower care, less care and poorer welfare. So I can see a direct link between unwelcome behaviour and the value of an animal, and see ways in which that very clearly can compromise welfare. So what I became interested in was the work that had been done in dogs. There's a beast called the CBARC, the Canine Behaviour Assessment Research Questionnaire. It has a website that's been operating since 2005, and it's now got data on 85,000 dogs from various breeds. This is what CBARC looks like. It's hosted by the University of Pennsylvania by an excellent research scientist, Professor James Sapel. We've been using CBARC specifically to look at some male dogs. The behaviour of male dogs was a recent study that we looked at. Male dogs that have been desexed for reasons other than behavioural management. And what we found looking at the CBARC data was quite a revelation. It's published in a paper that I can share with you. It reveals that, contrary to our expectations, desexing actually increases the likelihood of more than 20 unwelcome behaviours. And the longer the dogs have had their testicles, the less of these behaviours they show. So whereas we thought that castrating was a way of treating behaviour problems, on the whole, this data shows that they're not. And it's really revolutionised the way we think about dog behaviour. And it has been the first of several papers that have covered the same topic. So it was a large database, but it's the first of many papers that are saying the same thing. Clearly, when you use owners' reports of their animals, you have to accept that there are some limitations, and we always do that whenever we use data from a survey. For CBARC, we have to recognise that there will be some respondent bias, so we have to work out whether the CBARC respondents are actually representative of all dog owners, or are they the hardcore, the real behaviour nerds. And we also have to recognise that there's always a role for nature and nurture. But the more animals we get into a database, the more we can begin to unpick the roles of nature and nurture, and we can see how the dogs were socialised, when they were desexed, for instance, how they were managed, and what sort of training has gone into them. So that's what led us to think that it's now the horse's turn. We've got the CBARC in place, and it's producing results. It's produced over 70 research papers in peer-reviewed journals since it was launched, and that's why we were very pleased to late last year launch the horse equivalent, the eBARC. You can find out more in a link that I've shared with Bettina, an article in the conversation. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's spent the last 3 years of her life building eBark and working out exactly what horse owners and horse trainers and horse breeders want us to ask about their animals. And Kate's going to run through the rest of the presentation. I'll join you at the end just to top and tail this. Over to you, Kate.
Thanks so much for that kind introduction, Paul. I'm so excited to be here and introducing eBark to you. I know you'll find it such a useful tool for your own horses and something you'll want to share with your clients, and we'll talk about that a bit more later, and also your horse-loving friends. I've put the website address here for you. For those of you that are interested in the development of eBark, it's been 8 years in the making, and I was lucky enough to come on board 3 years ago. eBark is not developed in a full lab, with white-coated scientists. Quite the opposite. We formed an expert panel of behaviourists, veterinarians, coaches, horse trainers, welfare specialists, elite riders and discipline specialists from around the world. This panel helped us form the eBark prototype. This questionnaire went out to 1,300 horse owners. We wanted to include every possible question our expert panel thought might be of interest, and to be honest, I was a bit worried participants would complain about the length of the questionnaire in the feedback box we provided. Well, I needn't have worried. Not only did not one person complain about the length, but they really all had a very positive experience of the eBark project, and most of them took the opportunity to tell us even more about the horses they'd just answered over 200 questions on. You can't say we don't love our horses. From here, after some factor analysis, which is basically working out which questions were important and which we could or should lose or remove, we removed questions that very few people answered or items that didn't fit into one or other of the factors or groups that emerged with the analysis. Following this, we arrived at the final version of eBark that we have today. The survey consists of 96 questions, all of which are rating or multiple choice type questions. There's no need to type in any answers, and the survey can be completed from your computer or your mobile device. As Paul was saying, eBark is a sister project to CBark, and there's also a cat version, FeeBark. Who'd have thought you could have 100 questions on cat behaviour? But there you go, perhaps I'm just not a cat person. At first glance, you might think, okay, cat, dog, horse behaviour. You just change the questions a bit and off you go. But there's a big difference between how we interact with our horse, what we do with our horse, and what can potentially go wrong in these interactions, and our relationship with a cat or a dog. If we think about worst case scenario, what can go wrong when we take the dog to the park? Well, it might pull on the lead, jump on a passerby, or even bite someone. Now, let's take the horse out for a ride. I know, you can think of 100 potential problems even before you get the headstall on, never mind tacking up and riding the horse. There's no doubt that our relationship with our horse is complex and multifaceted. And for this reason, during the factor analysis of the eBark prototype, we found 3 main areas of interest. These were, number 1, behaviour, being the sorts of behaviours that the horse does on its own. Think of it like personality. The next was equitation. These were the behaviours that related to how the horse reacted when handled or ridden. And that's only for those horses that were ridden. The final factor is equipment and management. This, as you will have guessed, is about the tack we use with our horses and how the horse is managed on a day-to-day basis, including housing, feeding, and how often the horse is interacting with people. The CBark findings, such as the one that Paul was discussing, are very interesting, and eBark promises to do that and so much more for our understanding of horse behaviour, and in turn rider safety and horse welfare. One of the main aims of eBark is to identify behaviours that may be predictive of future undesirable or dangerous behaviours. For example, wouldn't it be good to know if horses that showed certain behaviours, such as pulling back when tired as youngsters, were more likely to rear under saddle, or horses that got progressively worse over time at pulling on the lead when leading were more likely to bolt later when under saddle. This knowledge would allow for early intervention, not only massively improving rider and handler safety, but most likely also improving that horse's welfare in the future because, as we know, the two go hand in hand. The sad fact is, as Paul has been discussing, in so many ways horse welfare lags depressingly far behind other companion animals. And while horses are not always defined as companion animals, we all know that that's exactly what they are. They make our lives richer and so much more enjoyable just from their very presence. I can understand why it's sometimes hard for us as riders or trainers to fail to see that our practices are not best serving the horse. I was fortunate enough to be involved in a noseband tightness study in 2016 where we looked at nosebands of various tightness. I was manning the video camera, and by just watching the horses it was impossible to say that there was any difference between the responses during the different levels of tightness. However, later when we downloaded the data, we looked at the small behaviours such as licking, chewing and swallowing, and also the heart rate results, and the changes were significant indeed. Many of the horses on the tightest fitting didn't swallow at all for the entire 10 minutes of treatment. Now, as riders, we wouldn't notice this. Who notices how often their horse swallows normally? But particularly when coupled with the fact that dressage riders are rewarded for horses with quiet mouths and visible saliva, it's important that we know what's happening under the bonnet, so to speak. Horses are hardwired to hide pain and distress because in the wild it makes them vulnerable to attack. Prey animals, such as dogs on the other hand, will cry and whimper at the slightest thing. You'd think my puppy was going to die when I put a collar on her. Honestly, I have never seen such a fuss. So it's up to us to try harder with our horses because eventually such distress, if left unresolved, will influence their behaviour. Given that, the main difference between eBark and the other bark projects as data collection tools is that eBark is a longitudinal study. While it's nice to have a snapshot of how your horse is behaving today, it's even better to be able to monitor your progress over time. By completing an eBark survey every 6 months, you'll be able to see how changes in your training and management are reflected in behaviour, a tremendously valuable tool for coaches, trainers and all horse owners. As you can see, the survey is divided into 2 sections. We collect detailed horse and owner demographics. These include the horse's age, breed, colour and height, as you would expect, but also details of the age the horse was first handled and started under saddle, its main riding discipline where appropriate, and so on. For owners' demographics, we include the owner's riding and handling experience, the length of time they've been around horses, and so on. Participants then move on to the training, management and behaviour questions, which make up the bulk of the survey. Of course, not all horses stay in one home their entire lives, and the exit survey asks respondents about the reasons a horse is no longer with them. This will provide useful information on why horses are changing homes and, in the future, help us to identify elements that might predict a horse having an unsettled life with ever-changing homes. Now I want to take you quickly through the process of getting your eBark results. If you go to the ebark.org page, you'll find a little bit about the development of eBark, and you can click on Take eBark Now, and you'll come through to this page. You'll need to create an account by entering your name and email and your choice of passwords. Just a quick note here, your information is both private and secure with eBark, and any resulting studies using the eBark data will be looking at groups of horses and never individual animals. Also, there's no charge associated with using eBark. Once inside, you'll find yourself on the My Profile page. You can edit your details here and upload a selfie, but don't forget to press Submit when you're finished. Also on this page, and more importantly of course, you can add a new horse. This will give you a pop-up box where you can add the horse. The only thing you need to get started here is the horse's name. All of the other items can be added later if you wish. However, if you do add a year of birth, just be aware that that really does mean a year and not a date, as the system can only accept 4 numbers, such as 2012, meaning 2012. If you want to upload photographs now, or decide to do that later, simply click on the green horse and you'll be walked through the process. The maximum upload limit here is 5 megabytes. So once you've entered your horse's name, press submit and your horse's profile will appear. Next, click Take eBark Now and you'll see all of your registered horses on this page. You can see I've got 3 horses here. Some I have photos for and others not. And it looks like I should update some of those photos too, which I can do at any time. Horses that have not yet taken an eBark will have a green reminder button above their profile. Click that and it will take you through to the eBark questionnaire. You can see that all 3 of mine are due for another eBark. Now, I mentioned earlier that the survey has 96 questions and it takes most people between 20 and 30 minutes to complete. Don't worry if you can't do it all in one sitting. The system will remember where you were in the survey and take you straight back to that question, even if you log out of both sites. Next time you come back to Take eBark, press Take eBark. Again, just go to that green notification above your horse, click it again, and you'll be back in the survey at exactly the same place. The survey will keep you in that place for 1 week, after which it will no longer be accessible. On completion of the survey, click the eBark results. The survey results may take up to 10 minutes to be calculated, but they'll show up here. If you navigate away from the page, try refreshing it when you return to see if your results are there. Let's take a closer look at the results graph. The dark green score is Rivero's results for his most recent eBark test, and the cream colour represents the population. You can quickly see that this horse scores poorly on human, social and non-human social confidence. And that's really good to know because it gives me, as his owner, a place to focus my work and to make his life easier and my riding safer. When I come back, which looks like it should be done now, to do another eBark, I'm going to hope to see big improvements here. I can also see that he's slightly below average on working compliance, and I've been trying to make my training more interesting and fun for him to further engage him with learning. I now want to take you through what each of these categories mean. You will find this information on the Frequently Asked Questions page. First of all, trainability. This is how your horse learns from combined reinforcement, so positive reinforcement and pressure release. Next, rideability. Of course, this only applies to the horses that have been ridden or driven in the past 6 months, and it's about your horse's responsiveness to cues from the saddle or while being driven. If your horse is easier to ride, you get a higher score. Boldness is your horse's reaction to the unfamiliar or the unexpected. A very reactive or spooky horse will have a low score. Handling compliance, how willing your horse is to be handled. A high score indicates a horse that is unreactive when handled. Working compliance, how willing your horse is to be worked. A high score indicates a horse that is happy to be worked. Easy to stop, this indicates that the horse is obedient to stop signals and does not run or pull through the handler or rider. A high score indicating a horse that's easy to stop. Forward going, this indicates a horse that moves forward when signalled to do so, not a horse that moves too fast or moves when not signalled. A high score indicates the horse that doesn't move back or rear when signalled to move forward. Human social confidence. How your horse behaves when approached. A confident horse will have a high score on this item. Non-human social confidence is how your horse reacts to other horses and other animals. Novel object confidence indicates how reactive your horse is to novel or new objects. Touch sensitivity. This means how reactive your horse is to touch, including saddling, and a high score indicates your horse is happy with these procedures, whereas a low score indicates your horse might be oversensitive to touch. Easy to load. This covers loading and unloading, so a high score indicates a horse that loads and unloads easily. And finally, independence. This measures how your horse reacts when alone. A high score indicates a horse that is calm when alone. Note that in all cases, a high score is what we are looking for, a sign of positive and safe behaviours. For example, touch sensitivity. A high score means that the horse is where you want it to be, and a low score suggests that your horse is oversensitive to touch. Okay, I've been saving the best for last, and now I want to talk to you about eBark groups. This is a very exciting development, and I know that the coaches and trainers amongst you are going to be particularly excited about this. You can now form your own private eBark group. To form a group, you'll need to have at least 10 potential members, and you simply complete the form here on your profile page, and you'll be sent your group code. Once you have the code, all of your group members can enter that on their eBark profiles, and you, as the administrator, will be able to see all of their results, and group members will be able to see how their horse compares to the group average, as well as the population as a whole. Of course, only group admins can see the other members' individual results, and they will appear as a drop-down menu on the admins page. Pony Club Australia is very excited about this feature, as it will allow their instructors to know in advance if a horse in their group might pose a problem during an event or a lesson. For example, knowing that a horse is scored poorly on easy to stop might mean that the instructor decides not to put that horse at the front of the ride. With the eBark Groups function, your clients will be able to see on their results graph how their horse compares to the group average, and how both the group average and their horse compares to the thousands of horses already in the eBark population. eBark participants can be in as many groups as they like, and we are already finding owners reaping the benefits of being in a breed group, a discipline-specific group, as well as their individual coaching groups. Rider safety is of paramount importance, and we know that one of the biggest risks to horse welfare is problem behaviour. eBark, being a longitudinal study, will reveal training, management and behavioural red flags that become predictors of undesirable behaviours and thus compromise rider safety and horse welfare. An example here might be the age of gelding. It is possible that the age at which a horse is gelded can predict how it might behave in the future. eBark is a global study, and each country and area has its own training and management practices. We are excited to see how your Canadian horses compare to others, and we'd be delighted to come back next year to present those results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. That was wonderful. Okay, everyone, just to wrap up, I hope you can see why we're excited about eBark. It's going to allow owners to benchmark the horses against others, other horses around the world, and also allow owners to assess how their training programs are working. eBark data will allow vets to see when dental procedures, for instance, are helping a horse, and breeders will be able to see how their bloodlines match up against one another. So the horse world will benefit from this for many, many years to come. And of course, researchers will have an unprecedented wealth of information to revisit how we understand horses and revolutionise the way we train and manage our horses. But in revealing the truth behind ancient traditions and modern trends, the eBark data will bring a wide range of benefits to many stakeholders, including the general riding public, younger riders, as well as veterinarians and other horse professionals. So we encourage anyone who cares about horses to share this link with those who care for them. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Paul and Kate, for that fascinating presentation. I think this is probably a group of people that will be quick to sign up to eBark and get the ball rolling in Canada. That was super interesting. Our next presentation is by a team of University of Guelph students that is doing research to help the horse industry in Canada navigate its way through the COVID-19 pandemic. Amanda St. Onge is a third-year Bachelor of Bioresource Management student majoring in equine management at the University of Guelph. She was raised with horses in a ranching community in northern BC, where she learned to train and rehome wild mustangs with her family and worked on her neighbor's cattle ranch. She plans to return to BC once she's completed her bachelor's degree to become a part owner in a zoo therapy business to help inmates and veterans return to society. Kaylee Copeland is entering her third year in a Bachelor of Bioresource Management program majoring in equine management. She's been riding and working with horses for 11 years, primarily in the hunter-jumper industry. Kaylee is passionate about equine education, as she believes it's the key to improving welfare standards for horses and thereby improving our industry as a whole. And lastly, Elizabeth Crouchman is in her fourth year in a Bachelor of Bioresource Management program, also majoring in equine management. She's been involved in the equine industry for 14 years with experience in both saddle seat and Western riding. So with that, I will turn the screen over to the students.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay.
coming through great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so hi, we are the Equine Information Source team, and today we're going to talk to you about who we are and the work that we have been doing. We are a group of students from the University of Guelph enrolled in the Bachelor of Bioresource Management degree program, majoring in equine management. This is the only 4-year equine-focused degree program in Canada, and it focuses on a solid background in business, biological science, equine management through practical and theoretical experience. We are working together with Dr. Katrina Merkes on projects related to information dissemination regarding COVID-19 in the horse community. This here is our logo, and it's a mixture of the Equine Management Program logo and the Equine Guelph logo. We are partnering with Equine Guelph, and they are helping us to share our information to the horse community. Our mission is to distribute information to help the Canadian horse community navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and reduce the spread of misinformation during the pandemic, and creating resources that are evidence-based and easy to follow.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So quick introduction. I know Bettina already introduced the students. I'm Dr. Katrina Merkes. I am Associate Professor at the University of Guelph, and I have a research program in equine behavior and management, as well as I am the developer and faculty advisor for the BBRM Equine Management degree program. I teach a number of courses in this program, and I'm really happy to work with these 3 students this summer who are very keen and creative in this specific topic of COVID-19, which I know is at the top of everyone's list. So go ahead.
Oh, hi everyone. As Bettina said, my name is Kaylee Copeland. I'm entering my 3rd year of my Bachelor of Bioresource Management degree this September at the University of Guelph. This summer, along with our COVID-19 projects, I was hired by Dr. Merkes as an undergraduate research assistant, and along with our COVID-19 projects, I'm currently working on a welfare research project with her analyzing tack usage in sale advertisements for horses. Upon my graduation, I'm hoping to pursue a career in equine welfare research and apply for a master's degree in animal behavior and welfare.
Hello everyone, my name is Amanda, as you already know. I am entering my 3rd year at the University of Guelph in equine management. I've had 19 years of experience in training and riding and working with wild horses, and I hope to use that and my education to help veterans and inmates to reintegrate into society upon graduation.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth and I'm in my last semester of the BBRM Equine Management Program. I have been involved in the industry for about 14 years, riding both saddle seat and Western, and as well as working at various barns. This summer, I'm working as a part-time research assistant for Dr. Murky's on this project, as well as another research project. After graduation, I'm interested in aiding the prevention of equine cruelty throughout Ontario. Our team creates evidence-based resources in the form of infographics, educational videos, and instructions sheets with useful tips. We have also been working on a return to competition risk assessment tool, a physical distancing calculator, video interviews with industry professionals, and we are also involved in monitoring discussion boards on equine Guelphs for the herd learning community page, which you will learn a bit more about later on in the presentation.
So one of the first projects that we worked on was creating these educational infographics. Infographics essentially work to present information in a way that's eye-catching, simple, quick, and engaging. This is an infographic I made with general COVID-19 information and safety tips. It outlines the main symptoms of COVID-19 to watch out for, some ways that the virus can be transmitted, methods of protecting yourself and others from the spread, and a few barn-specific items such as disinfecting tack and grooming supplies. Since these infographics are geared towards horse communities, we wanted to make them a little bit different than the standard infographics for COVID-19 that are out there. That's why there's some equine imagery on there with the horseshoes and the graphic of the rider. As well, since we only had so much room on the infographic, we also tried to select information that would be most relevant to barn environments. For example, COVID-19 isn't only transmitted by touching infected surfaces or by aerosol transmission. However, at the barn, these are the most likely methods of transmission that you're going to see.
So this is another infographic that we created. It portrays general information to barn goers about what they can do to help prevent COVID-19, the spread of COVID-19 in the barn. The general rules that we came up with were to disinfect all communal barn equipment after use, to only handle your own horse, to stay within the designated communal areas of the barn, as well as the well-known guidelines put forth by the government, to maintain physical distance from others, wash your hands regularly, and minimize sharing wherever possible. We chose these guidelines because in the long run, it'll be the little things that will help prevent the spread of COVID-19, and this will help protect both you and those who are caring for your horses on a day-to-day basis.
This third infographic is focused on equine service providers. Equine service providers are veterinarians, farriers, and body workers, such as registered massage therapists or chiropractors. Even throughout the pandemic, the work of many of these individuals, particularly vets and farriers, has remained extremely necessary. Now, with body workers coming back to work as well and vets taking standard appointments, not just emergencies, the risk remains ever present, particularly for equine service providers, as they often service multiple barns. And as a barn owner, you can't control where they go, and you don't know the biosecurity protocols of the other facilities they visit. So you really want to make sure that you're keeping yourself and your service providers safe. So this infographic provides some tips on how barn owners and their equine service providers can all remain safe throughout this time. Some of the suggestions on the infographic include using electronic payment, having conversations by phone, text, or email, having the horse standing ready for the service provider when they arrive so they don't have to touch cross ties or halters or lead ropes. Service providers should only be using their own equipment, and service providers should wash their hands between every horse they see. So those are just a couple of the suggestions that we put forth. All the information on this infographic was compiled from a variety of sources. We used back to the barn protocols from provincial and territorial sport organizations such as Ontario Equestrian and Cheval Quebec. We used recommendations from organizations such as the Ontario Veterinary Medical Association, as well as the advice of professionals within these industries such as Dr. Scott Weiss from the Ontario Veterinary College. A main section,
Sorry.
In this slide, you can see some examples of signage available for barn owners and managers of the on the Equestrian Canada website under their COVID-19 page. These signs were made to help guide the public and staff when they go to their barns. The links provided will be made available to you.
a main section of the Equestrian Canada COVID-19 Return to Business Operations Framework highlights the importance of creating a biosecurity plan for your facility. However, many facility owners might have never made such a plan before, and they may not know where to start. To help facility owners, we created a document with step-by-step instructions on how to create a facility diagram that is relevant to this pandemic and how to use that diagram to identify and mitigate risk factors. To supplement this document, we also created our own example diagrams with some identified risk factors and mitigation strategies. For example, looking at this diagram we have on the slide, it shows an overall layout of an equestrian facility. On this diagram, we used yellow arrows to map out high traffic routes, considering the routes that riders, coaches, and barn staff might regularly take. From there, we can use those purple circles to identify the barn doorways where a high-risk transmission area where a lot of the arrows converge. From there, we must consider how to mitigate our identified risk factor. For doors, luckily the answer is pretty simple. If you leave the door open, people won't touch the handle and your risk goes down. Having a proper facility diagram is key when creating a biosecurity plan, as it helps identify key problem areas and high traffic routes, and it can be really easy to get overwhelmed when looking at your facility as a whole. So breaking it down into sections can be very helpful to a lot of facility owners. For example, we created this diagram as well, showing high traffic routes on the interior of a barn. Now in this particular diagram, we considered what routes might be taken by different types of people within the barn. The yellow arrows highlight the path of riders and boarders, who are most likely to travel back and forth from a stall to the tack room while they're getting their horse ready to ride. The orange arrows represent the path of barn staff, who are most likely to go back and forth from the feed room to the stalls, then to the tack room. So from this diagram, we can look at the yellow arrows and identify that the tack room is a high-risk place for riders and boarders, less so for staff, and we can identify that the feed room is high risk for staff. The blue arrows highlight paths that would be taken by both groups, either for turnout, entering the barn in general, mucking out stalls, and once again, the barn door can be classified as a high-risk area for all. These are just a few examples of potential ways that a facility diagram can be used. When used properly, the facility diagram can play a key role in developing biosecurity protocols for your facility. And we hope that the documents we created will help barn owners develop effective biosecurity protocols that will keep themselves and others safe as we enter our new normal and return to the barn. Another project I've been involved in is working with James Hood, Equestrian Canada's High Performance Director, to rework risk assessment tools from the lens of the equestrian sport. Riding as a sport is fundamentally different than many other more traditional competitive sports. We train in barns, not gyms, and our training doesn't start and end with saddle time. We also need to consider the time, equipment, and space taken to groom, tack up, and care for our horses before and after we ride. This can present a whole new set of challenges when it comes to managing COVID-19 risk. Since the equestrian sport is so unique, we're working to create their own unique tool just for them. The two main tools we've been looking at are the WHO's Mass Gathering Decision Tree and the Canadian Sport Institute Network's COVID-19 Risk Assessment Tool for Sport. The Mass Gathering tool caters more to a competition aspect in terms of analyzing risk, while the Risk Assessment Tool for Sport caters to everyday training activities such as returning to lessons. Though these tools are different, they have the same premise and they work in the same way. They provide the individual with an in-depth questionnaire of yes/no questions, and they then provide the individual with a final weighted score that will give them an approximation of how much risk there is for them to go forward with their activities. These tools are really great because besides giving a risk score, they also help people who are filling them out identify which area they might need to work more on in order to safely host their event or training. An example of what a reworked question on this survey might look like is this one. The first question is from the Canadian Sport Institute Network's COVID-19 Risk Assessment Tool for Sport. It reads, will the facility have designated equipment, lockers, and stalls, meant for changing, for each athlete? Reworded, this question becomes, will the facility have designated tack and tack lockers and tack room space for each rider and designated equipment for each member of staff? As stated before, barns are not gyms or training centers, and as simple as these modifications may seem, when a trainer or a barn owner is faced with 100 questions on a questionnaire, changing these little words can really help trainers and barn owners visualize their situation, put it in the context of their own facility, and figure out where they stand in terms of COVID-19 risk.
So next we're going to talk about the physical distancing calculator. This tool was created to help determine how many people to have within a designated space and is based on the guideline to stay 2 meters or 6 feet apart from others. So I'm just going to go over to the actual calculator that we made just so you can take a look at it. So this is what the physical distancing calculator looks like. We have split the calculator into different areas of the barn so you can determine how many people you can have in your barn aisles, your tag room, or another space such as an office or a lounge if you have one. So what you do is you just input the number into the area into these blue boxes here, and underneath the number of people that are allowed in that area will be outputted. So for example, if you have a barn aisle that's 40 meters squared, you can have 10 people in that area. Or if it's in feet, you can, let's say you have 300 feet squared and 6 people can be in that area. So this works the same for the other 2 areas. For example, the tack room, if you had 12 meters squared, you could have 3 people, or if you had about 150 people squared, that would also give you 3 people. So this tool serves as a suggestion as to how many people can be in your barn while still maintaining physical distance. It is not required for you to follow these recommendations. It's just a guideline to help you figure out how many people you can have.
The equine information source will be conducting interviews with equine industry professionals to provide insight and information on topics such as managing hay during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're hoping to hold all these interviews over Zoom platforms such as this in order to record and edit the videos for viewers' convenience. The main questions asked to the interviewees will be written into the videos to make it easier to follow. Transcripts of the videos will be provided in a separate document, also accessible to the public. These interviews will be made available to the public through Equine Guelph's For the Herd learning community, as well as CFRU's Hoofbeats Radio that airs every Thursday between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Not only will the public be able to tune in and listen to these interviews on Hoofbeats Radio, but they will also be made available on the Hoofbeats Radio blog, along with the transcripts. The links provided in this slide will be made available to you. Some interviewees include Paul Sharp for pasture management tips, Jackie Vanderbrink for equine nutritional tips, Peter Aranto for farrier tips, and even System Equine for tips on how to keep a business running during these times. For the Herd is a fundraiser created by Ontario Equestrian to help barns during the COVID-19 pandemic. For the Herd is partnered with Jen Sweet, who started the For the Schoolies initiative. It is focused on supporting barns whose main income is lesson horses. The initiative has now collected over $150,000 in donation, and their goal is to reach $500,000. The donations are not only cash, but they can also be provided in hay, dewormer, farrier and vet services, and even open stalls for fostering horses. The links in this slide will be made available to you. For the Herd learning community was created by Equine Guelph and Ontario Equestrian. The learning community is only available to those who apply to the For the Herd assistance through Ontario Equestrian. This is a safe space for people to ask and seek help. The equine information source moderates specific sections of the For the Herd learning community to help research and answer applicants' questions. Some of the subjects include saving money tips, healthcare, farrier tips, pasture management, nutrition, and a lot more. The link provided in this slide will be made available to you.
We are working hard every day to build upon our catalog of resources to create more documents, tools, and educational media to help the Canadian horse community weather this pandemic. Through our work, we help to reduce the overwhelming amounts of media noise and create some clarity for those in the industry. We boil down massive amounts of information into more manageable chunks and help communicate which pieces of research and knowledge are most relevant to the horse community and their situation. We hope that our work is able to offer support to the community during these financially and mentally challenging times. By creating a supportive and well-informed industry, we are working to foster long-term sustainability within the Canadian horse industry so that we can all come out the other side of this pandemic stronger than ever before. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Amanda, Kaylee, and Elizabeth. That was fantastic. You've done a lot of work, and this is one of those times where COVID giveth and COVID taketh away. And I think what it might give us is a much better focus on biosecurity, learning to work more supportively with each other within the industry, recognizing our financial vulnerability. I know Christy has been working very hard with Equestrian Canada to try to get some clarity about equine farming practices, which is going to help our industry as well going forward. So as difficult as this year has been, there is a lot of positive things that are happened as a result of the devastation. Christy, would you like to take the screen now to walk people through the EC's COVID-19 resource page? I understand that a lot of these links for these infographics and so far will be available there.
Yep, so can you see the website page okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and I wanted to thank both Katrina and the students for all of their help. As Bettina mentioned, we've been working really hard on the COVID-19 aspects, and I know both James and I appreciate all the information that you guys have contributed to those initiatives, and specifically around some of the more education and application aspects. I really like the calculator and helping with some of that zoning map. So those are, you know, some of those things that really help to educate and put into application some of the resources we're working on. So thank you guys. And you did a great job on your presentation. So we will be both taking the presentation that you girls did today as well as the other resources. So on the Equestrian Canada website, we do have a COVID-19 specific, two specific pages. So they're both under the industry tab. You click on industry and then to about industry. Once you're in the about industry, you have two different COVID-19 resource pages. The first one is the response page, which is related to all the advocacy that's being done for helping with similar initiatives like the For the Herd, but in national scope, looking to get government assistance to help with some of the financial gaps that our equine farms are facing across the country. So there you can see a summary report from Wilton Consulting Group, who had assisted us with our survey results, as well as the ask that's gone into the government and highlighting some of those agricultural issues that we're facing. As well as links to things such as template letters to write your MP and a search engine to find your MP, and then some news links about different media that come around the equine sector and what it's facing during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then under COVID-19 resources, we have a lot of quick links. So as the girls mentioned, some of the information they shared with us today related to the facility operations, which is return to barn activity guidelines for barn owners. And then we have more resources down here, and we will be adding the links that they shared with us, as well as I believe most of what they already shared in infographics are up here. So we will be continuing to add to these different sections. We also have financial resources, and the list goes on and on. So we do update these regularly as we get things, as well as our weekly wrap-ups that include all of the information that we've worked on over the past weeks, what was accomplished that week, and what's coming up next will be included in here. So make sure you get the opportunity to go over and check out the website. There's a wealth of knowledge in there, and we're going to continue to grow on that library. Thanks, Bettina.
Christy, you've done a tremendous amount of work. And I would be remiss without thanking Katrina as well for guiding this all this work that the students have done. Thank you very much, Katrina. So if we have any listeners, participants today that would like to ask questions, we'll go ahead and have you ask questions now. You'll need to click the unmute icon on your screen. Do we have any questions for the students, or do you have any questions that you would like me to pass on to Kate Fenner about eBark, or Paul McGreevely for that matter? Any questions at all out there? All right, well, I think for eBark to work, we need to get as much Canadian participation as we can. So please ask your friends to tune into this presentation on the Equestrian Canada website. It'll be fascinating to be able to check in with them after a year and see how our horses fit with respect to behavior management and trainability compared with horses in the rest of the world. So I think with that, we'll sign off for today. Thank you again to the Equestrian Canada team that puts together this presentation so seamlessly, and particularly to Christy, who's been a driving force in keeping it rolling forward. So thanks, Christy. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.